Going here. Good afternoon, I'm Toby with CCDC Capital City Development Corporation. Today we're here to talk about Third Street streetscape improvements. I'm the project manager for CCDC. With me today is Jen, she's our communications specialist. And then we have Rob and Mary with Guho, who is our contractor for the construction of this. Real quick, there are restrooms in that back corner if you need them. So feel free to use those as you need it. We also have a sign-in sheet. I think most of you have seen that and fill that out. If you provide us your email address there, we'll use that to distribute email updates throughout the construction project. So let's go through here. Today we're going to go over the project overview, look at the project schedule, and then talk about our public outreach and construction communication, and then we'll open it up to discussion. Can everyone hear me all right? Perfect. So project overview, this is 3rd Street. The primary goals of this project is to include the intersections along 3rd Street between Jefferson and Grove, and we'll be building build out intersections at Jefferson, Bannock, Main, and Grove Street. And then we will be completing a raised intersection at Grove Street, which will then complete the work that's been done along Grove Street, and also tie into where the multi-route pathway that's coming from Broadway Avenue ties into Grove. And so it'll be enhancing that. That'll make it better for vehicles and pedestrians and bikes to get through there. Why we're doing this is because 3rd Street is an important north-south pedestrian and bicycle corridor. It connects to Julie Davis, which also then goes to BSU. You have all of your downtown area that it connects to. And then as you go up north on 3rd Street, you can get to Fort Boise and all the foothill trails and things like that. So it's an important transportation hub for bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles. And so this has been in the plan since 2023 to get these improvements done along this corridor. A little more detail of what this project will do. The red dashed lines there show the curbs that we're going to realign and remove some of the excess road width that we have in there. And that allows us to capture about 8 feet of buffer space that we can use for streetscaping along Main Street from 2nd to 4th and south on 3rd Street from Main to Grove. And so we'll be extending the curbs out there and capturing some more landscape buffers. We're also working with VRT to move an existing bus stop that's in front of the Department of Labor building on the west side of 3rd Street, and we will move that to the east side of 3rd Street. I should say VRT will move that. We're giving them the space to do that, so we appreciate them teaming up with us on that. We're also working with the Department of Labor and Idaho Power to remove 2 driveway entrances along 3rd Street, which are the red X's on there. And that'll help reduce conflict with the pedestrians and bikes as they're going along the sidewalk there. And then we're working with Idaho Power and the other utilities along 3rd Street to underground the power utilities that are on the west side of 3rd Street. And that helps both with aesthetics and then also for safety, because you don't have overhead power lines. Many of you probably know, if you're in the area, that they just recently got taken out by a construction truck. If they're underground, that's much harder to do. So we're working with them to get that undergrounded as well. Schedule overview. We started back in 2023 looking at the design. In March of 2024, we had our design review approved by the city and ACHD. From there, we moved into design development and construction documents. In September, those were complete, and so we started with permitting and then bidding with our contractor Guho. And then that brings us up to today where we're having our neighborhood meeting before we get into construction. And a general overview of construction is that will start the week before Thanksgiving and run through August, which is just before the end of the urban renewal district of River Myrtle, which is September of 2025. I'm going to turn it over now to Rob with Guho, and he'll walk through more of the specific phasing of the project.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah. Put forward or just good.
Everyone, my name's Rob Cloninger. I'm with Guho, be the superintendent overseeing this project. And the primary contact for any schedule relating questions or access issues experienced throughout the project when we're in front of your areas. Along with what we're doing here today, we will also have, Toby and I went through earlier this week and talked to some here, and as we get going in construction with our outreach to the street frontage businesses will grow as well to try and keep in coordination as best as we can. So our overall approach to the project, we're going to start on Main Street in these two areas. You'll see some smaller scale activity, perhaps the week before, the short week before Thanksgiving, ramping up with bigger construction activity starting in December. So we're going to try to, for this first phase, for the rest of the year, to be able to keep Main Street as 2 lanes and maybe shrink that southern lane just a little bit to give us more construction access to do the sidewalk work. We are set up with Ada County to take that lane, so if this ends up being a safety issue for our workers and things, we may end up reducing Main Street to 1 lane at this time, but for communication's sake, for the rest of this year, smaller footprint, aside from taking some sidewalk. And then at the start of the year in January, we'll move to our next phase, which gets a little more involved. Where Toby mentioned the Idaho Power work, where they have to take all their overhead power and put it underground. That runs from Jefferson to Grove Street, that work activity. So we plan on closing the southbound lane on 3rd Street to support that work. Typical with these projects, we try to coordinate with all the utility companies, as many people that have work required in the area as possible, to try and get, while we have that disturbance, to try and get as much activity done in there as we can. So we get in there and disturb the area one time and then open it back up for use after that. So part of this and this utility piece, these things are within our project to coordinate the disturbance, but somewhat out of our control. So we'll help Idaho Power with the traffic control, but their approach to the project and everything else, we will give our input as much as possible, step in there as much as possible to communicate with the business owners, to let them know if there's something coming that is going to be a disturbance to your day-to-day activities. But I understand it's kind of outside of our area. If they have any shutdowns and things, they will reach out and coordinate that with you guys outside of us. But we will do our best to be engaged with them and coordinate with you guys on disturbances to your parking or business access or anything else like that, to as much as possible. Yes, sir.
Ron, for giving access to these businesses, do you know, or has it been determined if the utility installation would be a bore or open trench?
It's kind of both. With the Idaho Power work itself, most of it, they have some underground infrastructure and raceways already in place that they can use. They'll have some undergrounding to tie some overhead drops back in and some things like that where they'll disturbing, but most of the footprint, at least as far as Idaho Power is concerned, is going to be utilizing infrastructure they already have in place and just doing some tie-ins. And then it would just be a matter of pulling their new wire in and doing their cut over when that time comes.
So we anticipate the cutovers to be after business hours.
Yes, those we anticipate that being overnight, and again, Idaho Power coordinating that with everybody that would be affected by that.
Well, sure, especially the time of year, because of the cold conditions, many of the facilities may require certain resets of equipment or whatnot to assure that they're habitable on the next business day. Thank you.
On the side note to that, so all the overhead power, you have the high wires is the Idaho Power portion. The low wires, which is what got taken out by the construction activity last summer, that's low voltage or communications. So all those operations are separate. So Idaho Power will take care of theirs. They'll work with the utility companies to take care of that part. But the utilities will run a different path than the electrical. And then typical when it comes to fiber and communications, they have a non-disturbance date from Thanksgiving through the first of the year for the holiday season, where they don't disturb the communications. Yes, sir.
So presumably they'll handle this in such a way that there will be no disruption to the power or the other elements of the utilities while they do their thing, and then they route it
Yeah.
underground and turn off the other stuff. All makes sense.
Yep.
Just to be clear, because you're showing the construction activity on Main Street there as well. Is that also undergrounding that you're showing there, or is that just continued part of your Main Street work that started December of 20?
Yeah, it's a continuation of that.
So the first slide said that you were starting January 20 or December 24 and ending January 24, but that's not really true. The Main Street construction will continue through February 25, or does it go longer than February 25?
It'll actually run. We're hopeful of that. There's some paving that has to be done, and there's temperatures that are required for that. So what we've done with the phasing, there is some overlap in that. So we're starting out with a smaller scale footprint to communicate that. And then that Main Street phase will overlap into the next couple phases.
Okay.
Keep in mind, this is a really high level view of and trying to communicate at what given time, what activity will be happening in certain areas. As the project goes on, late February, there's a good possibility we don't have all of that red on Main Street taken over. We could have half of that built back or all of it built back.
Sure.
It's hard to determine what we're gonna have for weather and different things. So we all would love nothing more than to give you just a day by day exactly what's gonna happen. I'm sure all of you understand. We just want to communicate the best we can on what areas are disturbed, when, how long, what that looks like as the world evolves around us. What we see and interpret once we get down there and put this stuff in place, how things react. We're wide open. Communication and feedback we get from the community. We do the best we can to try and meet everything in the middle and make everything go. Yes, sir.
Are you guys putting up the traffic barriers that are gonna remain there the whole project, or is like Idaho Power put up their own, and then they take them down, then you put up your own, then you take them down?
It'll be both. What we're trying to coordinate here is we'll work with them on the traffic control. That'll give us a little bit of leverage to try and keep them within the lanes and working. The utility companies are more directly concerned with getting their stuff going and less concerned with the public interruptions and things like that.
Yeah.
So when we have to overlap with that, we like to get involved in such a way to where we can help steer that in a way that meets everything in the middle to the best of our ability.
Okay.
Because if we leave that for a utility company to manage, and you guys have probably experienced some of that, they just come in, shut everything
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Not really much of a regard for a day-to-day operation of a business, and just do what they need to do and move on. So yes, Don.
The last utility question I think I have, do we anticipate an interruption for the geothermal waters?
We do not anticipate an interruption to the geothermal supply at this time. We're not we're not doing anything with geothermal at this point.
I'll add to that, Tom, the city of Boise is looking at doing a repair into the Department of Labor building on the southwest corner. They have identified that there's some repair they have to do there. And so we've been letting them know our schedule so that they can coordinate that work while we're in there. But they would have to reach out to you guys before they do that work.
Just to add on to my question, we have pretty big concerns about access to our alleyway.
Where are you at?
We're at 305 Bannock, so yeah, right where it says Third Street. Yep, that alleyway.
This
access.
here?
Yep.
You're one of these four?
Yeah, exactly. We
Okay,
have some-
yeah, we did pick up on that when we were doing our rounds
Great.
earlier this week, and just, I guess, to touch on that. Idaho Power does have some work to do inside there, so when we figure out what their schedule looks like and what that's gonna do, we'll coordinate that. There's some trenching that has to be done across there, so there's gonna be likely be a period of time when they're doing that there's gonna be some interruption for all of those four businesses in their parking. And we'll work together to figure out what we can do there. In the past, being able to work with CCDC and work out some temporary parking arrangements or whatever needs to happen there. We'll just come together and figure out what that looks like.
Right.
Then later in May, if we get to going through the rest of the phases here, from May to August, when we're moving into more of our active construction on that block, there'll be a time where we have to rebuild that approach.
Got it.
We may very well be able to pivot when Idaho Power wraps up their work while we're having that disturbance in that block of time. Maybe we go ahead and move forward to doing the approach and redoing that at that time, to where when we do move in there, there's less disturbance when we go and do the bulk of work in that phase.
Right. Yeah, we appreciate that.
Working through that, but yeah. Just,
Yeah, I was, just on that same closure, it shows that the sidewalk is gonna be closed during that time, is that so? Or is that just kind of overlap?
yeah, that's kind of just a block. So a general note to think about with this phasing plan. We will keep north, south and east, west pedestrian flow open. It may, when we'll have it signed, it may look different from period to period, but keeping the pedestrian flow going is something that we really strive to do as well. Obviously, we have to tear the sidewalk up, so we close that, but we'll phase that in such a way to where there's some access, might have to cross and do some different things during different periods of time, but keeping that east, west, north, south pedestrian flow going as much as possible. And when we're directly in front of a business, that coordination gets a little tighter to meet in the middle and figure out what that looks like. If is there alternate access or what we need, what provisions we need to make to keep you going. But our overall goal is and always has been to reduce, if not ever, have to have a business close down. We'll jump through whatever temporary things in necessary to keep businesses open. We understand fully that that's his livelihood and do everything we can to make sure that that's maintained to the best of our ability. So through February, working through this phase where this area from Main Street to Jefferson, that's mainly just the Idaho Power work that is happening. And then Main Street will continue from phase one, and then we'll start construction down on reconstruction of this back towards Grove as well. Then as the heavier construction will pick up after February. Phase three, we're moving in. We have to redo this intersection at Grove and redo the roadway and everything back to here. So merging all of this together again, to your point, a lot of this will probably be opened up by this point. This is shown as a big block of construction activity, but there will be pedestrian traffic on one side or the other through that phase. And then May timeframe, we'll have to see, we'll try and get some of the paving patch back here Maine will likely try to open up that side prior to May. But just as a general rule, this is what the area is going to look like. We're also we have to redo the Idaho Street intersection, so we're gonna do this half at this time as part of this package work here also. So that'll wrap up around the 1st of May. Yes, sir.
Okay, so just so I'm interpreting this correct, you are fully closing, Third Street, south of Maine and the block between Maine and Idaho, to vehicular traffic. You'll maintain pedestrian traffic, but all vehicular traffic will be prevented from accessing Third Street on those 2 blocks.
Yes, so this will be a hard closure here to support our construction activity. Soft closure on this side for access into these parking areas here. We phased Idaho and Maine in such a way to try and keep one lane open throughout the whole project. So doing this side of Idaho allows business access or anything that needs to get into this area from Main Street. And we move to the next slide. This will shift and these would access from Idaho Street. So,
But there's no through traffic between Idaho and Maine
correct. Correct.
between at least February and whenever your next slide goes to.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, this is a overview. If we can gain efficiencies, we get better weather. We get in a situation where Idaho can happen faster than that. Trying not to have 500 slides and make this too confusing, just try to communicate the bulk of what things are going to look like through what your durations of time. Worst case scenarios. So then after May, once we get these sections put back together, moving into our final phase, which is a little bit more involved and probably scary to look at, but again, phasing and not necessarily looking like this from May through August. That's why I say we'll come build the other half of the main. Third Street would open back up to front. And then we'll move to the other side of Idaho, so access to these businesses here can access off of Idaho. And then we'll start rebuilding the other side of Idaho. We have all 4 corners and intersections to repave on Jefferson, Bannock, Idaho, and Maine. So figuring out the best way to do that. This is our approach at this time, depending on, again, how the world reacts and how everything goes. How we're approaching these intersections. We have storm drain that we have to put in from Jefferson all the way to Idaho Street that's underground that we have to get through intersections on. So this actually works best to promote getting through this faster and opening it back up. How this goes from May through August. We'll be communicating that along the way on how the project evolves. You know, Jefferson could open ahead of that. Idaho could very likely open ahead of that, and then moving towards different things. So this is our general approach that we're trying to take for the project at this time to get through the project as efficiently as we can. Yes, sir.
Oh, this is scary. All right, so I really need access to that alleyway. We've got ADA handicap parking spots in the back there. They run a elderly medical clinic. You have your point, right?
Okay. So
So are you telling me you can work with us to make sure we will have access?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So that's what I'm saying. Communicating that that's the area that we're going to be working in. The intent is understanding that parking lot and that it feeds 4 businesses.
Yeah.
It's important for us to keep access to that. So where those intersections in that road is closed to public use, it is going to still be open for local use.
Great.
So what that looks like for that alley, we're gonna have to coordinate, communicate that on each given day. What's going on in the Idaho Street intersection, what my intent is at this time, and you know, this is 6+ months away. This is gonna evolve, but what the intent is at this time is to try and attack Jefferson and that stretch of Idaho at the first go of this thing. I do have the underground and then start opening things up. So if I can get this part done and leave some soft access for you from Bannock, once this can get complete, I can shut Bannock down totally and allow you access it. So there's a lot of possibilities to work with you guys on that one, and we understand, and it's been communicated that that's important, and we get it.
So Rob,
Yeah.
during the Grove Street construction, there was somewhat a come as you are approach to the traffic control. Do we anticipate seeing more, this is kind of tagging on to the previous question. Do we anticipate seeing more flagmen and direction of traffic here?
We have flagging in here, and we anticipate using some of the flagging for the Idaho Power work. We'll probably get into the flagging a little bit if we get into situations where you go to the intersection for pedestrians. This is probably gonna be a little more set. It'll just be a communication of the local routing. So that,
Those represent the customers or clients that need to come in, and then of course, the workforce that needs to be able to get access to their parking areas so they can actually get to them.
right, and communicating that, trash pickup, deliveries, those kind of things to communicate and coordinate, make sure that they're able to do those things like we were able to do your parking lot, to arrange for trash and when we were in church. The roadways themselves, they can get tricky or in the ground. Do up weather and things like that. But just want to communicate the overall intent is to make sure that you guys have access to your businesses and that we are here, we put our information out, we try to communicate as much as possible and be available if there's an issue that we need to try and come together and resolve.
And this is kind of a dense area. So what about equipment staging? Do we anticipate that taking place in the work zones and not in areas that we're trying to travel through? And
Yeah, so the red areas would be primarily just that. So like when we're on Main Street, our equipment and staging will be in our construction zones through phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. There may be on these where we're redoing the intersection, there may be a little bit of not staging, but some spillover while we're doing work activity into these yellow areas, just to get that work done. But that's why we get our contact information out. We try to police that with our subs as much as possible, where they're not parking where they don't need to be parking, where they're not blocking access. Because as much as we try to have that coordination with our subcontractors, sometimes they go where they don't need to go, and we might not pick up on that right away. So contacting us at the field level when those things occur, that's going to be your quickest path to resolution, because we can jump right on it. You know, we complain to ACHD, then they have to go through the path, and then it could be that afternoon or the next day before a problem's resolved. So
well, it's something helpful there. I speak for everybody that whether it's our fellow employees or reporting to our directors, our organizations, chairmen, whatnot. Where the excavation takes place, if that can be coned, it doesn't block driveways, because we know it happens, stuff happens. And then if it gets snow covered, we don't have someone that thinks they can four-wheel onto it or whatnot. So the request would just simply be during the winter months, that things that aren't otherwise going to be clearly visible, that there would be a caution or a cone put there. Might require a little bit more cones. I mean, this is a lot of work to get done, so it seems like you're gonna have kind of an aggressive schedule for yourselves.
yeah, so where we have open holes and things like that, we will have carriers come out. We try as much as possible to put waterfill barriers, ADA walls, or fencing, or some kind of deterrent to keep pedestrians and traffic and public out of our work zones and out of any safety hazards. So temporary fencing or paneling or something to delineate the work from general access. And stepping that up a little bit more in front of businesses where to get the panels and some of those things to the best of our ability. Also. Okay, that's kind of wrapping this thing up in August and then turning it back over to as it is now, just with pulled out corners and some new intersections and roadway. So that's our overall approach to the schedule of the project. I'll give it back to Toby to finish up.
Just kind of finish by rounding out some of the public outreach and communication, so I'll turn it over to Jen to talk about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Rob. So we're committed to ensure that we communicate with you guys regularly and as timely as possible. So we know that the phasing is a lot to consume. So what we're going to do is communicate that as it's happening in real time. So as soon as we have updates from the Guho team of where they are, what's happening next, we're going to communicate that with you guys. So we do that in different ways. We obviously sent out a postcard that most of you have received. And then we also have our project page here. Please scan that with your cell phone, bookmark it. That's something you would check regularly. We'll also do social media updates. We'll have signage on site. So I know you had questions about pedestrian access and all of that. So we'll put signage out there to help direct pedestrian flow. I think one of the best ways to stay in communication, if you guys have put in your email address in the sign-in sheet, we're going to send regular email updates. Toby here will probably do that on a monthly basis or sooner if it's needed. And then, of course, if you guys have any needs, I really encourage you to take Toby's card, Rob's card, and just have that saved. So that way, if there are any issues that pop up last minute, you guys are able to communicate with those two. Okay. And of course, there's going to be the construction team on site. They'll probably pop in on you guys checking in. And of course, if you guys see them out there, you can always tag somebody too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So on the screen now is our contact information. And as Rob said, the quickest way is to reach out to the field. That would be Rob or myself. And we will work to get any questions answered or issues resolved.
If you want to share slide decks, we can share with that.
Yes, we can mail that out, sure, as a PDF. Yeah, and as we get closer to working in your area, we'll reach out again directly to you guys and make sure you're aware it's coming and again, be able to answer any questions, so. Yeah, we can open it up to discussion. Any other questions or?
I did just have a question about coordination with the office tower that's being built on the main block. Because they have been doing a lot of road closures themselves along Danik as well as on Idaho Street. And we know that 4th Street is already closed because of that. And so is this being coordinated with PDA at all, or yeah, just because again, you know, we have an early childhood program there that we have 40+ infants and toddlers coming in every day, so we need to make sure that families can park close enough and that they're safely enough to.
Sure. Yeah, so our traffic control plans are all reviewed and approved by ACHD, who also does that building's
Yeah,
traffic
we know
control.
how their coordination is. I'm not sure, I'm actually running that, you guys go directly coordinate that.
So
But I do understand that working with ADHD, but
Yep.
we've been to Boise in the past 2 years, so.
To answer your question to that, so we are still working, but have been working in the limit districts, been on Grove Street between 9 and 16. So between us, Oakland, Perigee, several different contractors in the area, there's a lot of different projects going on. What we did with that is we had a weekly meeting with those contractors as well as ACHD and ourselves to kind of take the lead on coordinating how everything was functioning together. And then, you know, the 12th and Idaho building was going up at that time as well. So there was a there was a huge amount of disturbance in that area. So we take a pretty active role ourselves and then also help with that coordination, get involved with CHD. Also, not just on what our own disturbance looks like, but what does that look like through the rest of other construction activities or
So,
things that are going
You
on.
know, that's going to be the training for this project as well, but to like a sort of stand-up meeting or something, standing meeting like that.
Yeah, well, I can say we will definitely be coordinating with the other construction in the area. I would anticipate that we'll kick back off our coordination meetings because we have a few other areas in town that we're working in as well. So tying them all together and making sure that we're all on the same page, you know, we're not even getting in our own way from the talking to. But so,
Thank you.
yes, we do get involved with that as much as possible.
You may have said this before I slipped in, the State Street project, I don't know when that's scheduled to end. How does this sync up with ending? Adding, because, you know, we saw so much displacement on the Jefferson and then on the Third Street because of that project.
That was a really good question. It's my understanding that but probably need to,
It's your start to their finish.
I think they have it listed two, so.
On the desk.
Especially for the persons running. And us, you're in citizens.
So I got two other quick questions for you. Like again, specifically to our alleyway, business signage, like on State Street, like in 16th, I've seen, like Smoky Mountain business access. Is that something you can work with us on if like there's a weird kind of closure that?
Yes, totally. And CCDC is very good when it comes to any kind of special signage, things that we need to do to help CCDC. They're very supportive.
Okay.
So yes, those are options. That's the key behind communication. You need some extra signage or you see something like that that's gonna help.
Yep.
Reach out and like I said, CCDC has always been very, very accommodating.
Okay. And then my other question, I know for the January, February time when the other contractors and utilities are in there, you're not in direct control of them. But if we have access issues, can we call you? Like rather than
Yes,
be looking
yes.
for smart lights, telephone number?
Absolutely.
You mean you don't want to deal with the cable
I
company?
don't, I really don't.
And in truth, we're running those contracts with those utilities, and so yes. So,
Okay.
So they're your sons, they're not Idaho Power.
In the sense of how a public utility would be, set. You more or less paying for the work, but I wouldn't consider them a subcontractor. We're CCDC and the project is paying for that work. But the control of a public utility company would be different as having an actual contract with a subcontractor. Right? It's
there.
a little different mechanism there.
Thanks, John. And then to clarify the questions on the project itself, or any changes thereof. If you'll, to yourself, Toby, and to Mary, and questions on construction, we'll go to you, Rob.
Yes, I would have any construction related issues or, you know, questions for maybe some scheduling or when some things are gonna go, we can fill the gaps there, but it's in the construction side, something that is causing. Let's have a conversation about it.
Many of us arrived at our job site or our place of business early hour prior to employees flowing in. And so we get truck parked there with a pile of culvert on it. It's gonna occupy 16 spaces and they're gonna get all of it.
Yeah, and we welcome those because that's what it's about.
Any other questions? Perfect. Appreciate your time. Again, there's cards and the mailers back there for our information, and please reach out when you have questions. Have a good afternoon.
I'd like to sidebar.